Yo, it's me, it's DDP.
These videos are satiric reviews. You don't have to agree, but don't bitch about it. I hate this channel.
Hey there, I'm the SIJW Infuso, and I feel like I say this a lot on my channel, but do you know who one of my all-time favorite wrestlers growing up was? A man by the name of DDP. Diamond Dallas Page. And I mean that too. I had all the DDP merch one could ask for, including all the many different DDP action figures that were out there. I had them all. I think at one point I even owned a DDP kite. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. I think I might have owned one. Page and Raven's feud in WCW was my rock in Austin. I was the biggest DDP mark you could find. And I wasn't alone in my appreciation of the master of the diamond cutter. He was a fan favorite, constantly used to promote the company, and in most things WCW related, you typically find his face and name next to the likes of Hollywood Hogan, Sting, and Ric Flair. He was a household name in the 90s, and saw success that most don't see in his industry, let alone when they're just breaking into the business in their late 30s. Page would win the WCW TV title, the United States Championship twice, the tag team titles 4 times with 3 different partners, and most surprisingly, the World Heavyweight Championship on 3 separate occasions. The man had a career that will never be duplicated. He beat the odds simply by coming to the party late and still finding seating. And then, somehow he was made the guest of honor. The guy had charisma and was always entertaining whether he was in the ring or backstage on the mic. There was just something likable about him and his larger-than-life persona. Not to mention that anyone who was a die-hard WCW fan watched the man grow and come into his own, starting off there as a manager and then late in life getting trained and actually becoming a professional wrestler. Anyway, you would think that with this man's undeniable star power, he'd be given a pretty prominent role in the WWF following the acquisition of WCW. You, however, would be wrong. DDP actually turned down guaranteed money. More money, in fact, than the WWF was offering him to put his aging body through physically demanding work with a vigorous schedule. I mean, the man could have just sat at home, did his best Al Bundy impersonation, and collected his paychecks. But instead, he went to work.
What a mark.
And for his sins, he was sacrificed to The Undertaker. You see, in the weeks building up to the real People's Champion's WWF debut, there were promos and vignettes being aired of someone stalking The Undertaker's at-the-time wife, Sarah. You may remember her from that really unfortunate neck tattoo that The Undertaker got. That came back to bite him in the ass. You'd think that Taker would take notice and start looking for answers as to who was stalking his wife and why it was allowed to air on WWE TV. Or, you know, why it sounded exactly like Vince McMahon.
This is The Undertaker's wife, Sarah. Comb your beautiful blonde hair.
This is The Undertaker's wife, Sarah, combing her beautiful blonde hair.
But ultimately, on an episode of Raw, it was revealed when the masked assailant would show up on The Undertaker's motorcycle to reveal...
It's me! It was me all along!
No, that's not what happened. It would have made more sense. Man, did this moment really blow my 9-year-old mind. DDP was in the WWF? DDP was... Wait.
I said, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
DDP is stalking The Undertaker's wife?
Okay, but why though?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I get it now. And hell, I even understood to an extent then that in wrestling, characters and gimmicks change. But usually, or at least ideally, that change makes sense. There's either some sort of progression of the character, or people disappear for a while before coming back with an entirely different look and name, but there was some kind of evolution there. But here, he was still DDP. He still looked like DDP, he still wore DDP's clothing. The only change was that he got a haircut somewhere down the line. What was he doing stalking the dead man's live wife? Why would he do it? I mean, it was pretty common knowledge that he already had a wife. And yes, DDP did do some excellent heel work in the past, but I don't know. I mean, I personally could never buy back into the guy becoming a prick, following him laying out the New World Order. It never seemed legitimate. Anytime since then that he was made a heel or it was teased, I don't know, it just felt scripted. And I understand, guys, yeah, it is, but you know, it just didn't feel natural. Well, at least we have a good back and forth to look forward to between these two respected future legends, am I right? I mean, sure, yeah, the gimmick doesn't really work for him, but he's gonna make the best out of it. I mean, he's fighting the Undertaker. That's gotta translate to some success, right?
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
Yup. Wrong. Wrong. So wrong. Entirely wrong. Couldn't be more wrong. DDP was jobbed out and squashed when going up against the Undertaker. And not just the first time these two would meet. Continually throughout their feud, he was just crushed. DDP became the Undertaker's personal punching bag. Taker's the big dog, and DDP has been stalking his wife. So from a storyline perspective, that makes sense. But that just brings me back to my first problem. Who decided this was a good story to begin with? Because it's not. Though, now that I think of it, it's fitting that The Undertaker was his first opponent. Because he was immediately laid out to rest and buried. To make matters even worse, though I can understand if you didn't think they could, I didn't at the time either, DDP claimed that he was using Taker's wife as a means to get to him. Again, doesn't really fit the DDP persona, but it's a good heel tactic nonetheless. Targeting your opponent's loved ones to get a rise out of them. That's actually a good story beat. You know, that is until he randomly just fell in love with her for real and then just started stalking her to, well, just to stalk her, really. Wait a second, did he just give himself Stockholm Syndrome? His newfound obsession for Sarah was put on display when the man would make a shrine for her. And yeah, look, I know it was cute in Hey Arnold, but this is one of those things that doesn't really translate all that well into real life. So maybe, you know, maybe don't. Maybe just don't. Maybe don't. That's just weird, man. You need a better hobby. Have you tried yoga? And also, I don't want to harp too much on it, but if you didn't believe that the man was being buried as soon as he came into the company, because I guess it's reasonable that he would lose to the likes of Undertaker and Kane, he also lost to the Undertaker's wife in her one and only televised match. Ladies and gentlemen, WWE doing what they do best, building up the stars of tomorrow. Oh no, I'm sorry, there seems to have been a smudge here. What I meant to say was, destroying the stars of today. During his feud, he'd reform a tag team with his former Jersey Triad partner and best friend, Chris Kanyon. I don't really remember them bringing up their past too much, and having Kanyon get involved in this storyline was just a complete waste. The gimmick wasn't really working for DDP, so you paired him with his former teammate, and now it's not working for the both of them. Great booking! Despite being a somewhat memorable part of their time in WCW, they lack substance and importance in the WWF, and the pairing immediately floundered. Despite becoming the WWF Tag Team Champions, it didn't make a difference. And this really just goes to show that championship belts don't make wrestlers important. It's the wrestlers that make the championship titles important. It seemed like the only real reason that they were given the belts was so that the Brothers of Destruction could take them away from them. Hell, the only reason it seemed like the company put the two back together was so that The Undertaker and his brother Kane could pull them apart. And pull them apart they did, as Page would get injured in a tag team steel cage match. After taking some time off to lick his wounds clean and heal from both the injuries to his body, his career, and his overall legacy, he'd return with a brand new gimmick. DDP returned to the WWF as a yoga-obsessed, smile-stricken motivational speaker. And most notably during this stint, his face would resemble that of a victim hit with Joker gas, or a Cheshire Cat who was given way too much acid. He cut promos claiming that seemingly terrible tragedies in life weren't a bad thing. They were a good thing.
I want to give everyone a warm hello. It's me, DDP.
You receiving the stink face from Rikishi
isn't a bad thing.
What the hell are you talking about?
Did you just say you're always happy? I'm always happy. Right. Well, Diamond Dallas pays with a left.
You like me, and I am going to make you like you. Okay, it's a really bad thing. Bad. It's Kane! You need to know that you're coming out here tonight and interrupting me wasn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. Horrible, disgusting. But at least it didn't happen to me.
Oh my God! No! Touchdown!
And while he wasn't racking up a ton of victories, this was at least a turnaround of sorts. Granted, he was never going to meet the main event levels he'd seen in WCW with this gimmick. It was at least a solid mid-card act. He'd switch from heel to face following the Alliance's loss, and would dethrone Christian as European Champion. Which was a huge shock to me, as I just kind of assumed that his championship-having days were long behind him. And for what it's worth, I actually thought his short time with this belt was good TV. He'd feud with the former European champion Christian before the two teamed together, with Dallas becoming Christian's life coach and advisor, trying to teach him a more positive philosophy. Of course, Christian, prone to hissy fits and flipping out, could only stay that way for so long, before he'd reignite their feud for the championship at WrestleMania X8. Page would defend and retain his title that night before eventually losing it to a much more remembered and beloved European champion, William Regal. Gotta make a video on him, I don't know why it hasn't happened yet. Following a neck injury from a match with Bob Holly, DDP would announce his retirement and leave the company after only just a little under a year with the WWF. And that's kind of the end of his time. A disappointing end for all. But for what it's worth, I'm glad that the WWE shows up somewhere on the guy's resume now, and that he has 2 more title runs in his title reign section on Wikipedia. It sucks thinking about what could have been, but it sure is nice knowing what was. While not an integral part of his career, it was still a pretty interesting time in it, and it seemed like with time it was progressing, so it's really a shame that it got cut short. But just remember, DDP's run in the WWF isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. You're watching the Social Injustice Warrior V Infuso's channel, dude. So if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too want to become a V-tard, don't forget to like and subscribe, and click that little bell icon to get updates and notifications. Ooh, tell him what up, Mach. Ooh, yeah. Follow the man on Twitter, yeah, because we all know it's not stalking if it's on the internet, yeah. Join the madness by joining the Discord, and if you have a moment of time and a free $1 to spare, head over to the SIJW's Patreon, dig it, where you can request videos, get exclusive videos, and early access to content, yeah. Or go down to PayPal, where you can buy the shirts, brother. But most importantly, just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.